Welcome back to another episode of Rocky Unscripted, where we talk about faith when Sunday is over. And today, I am talking about faith when Sunday is over with Amanda Rohrbaugh. Just me and you today, Amanda.
I know. Has this ever happened? What was on Matt? Someone else?
I think you might be right. I don't know that we've ever just had an episode where it's just us two, but we trimmed the fat. We're like, we need to get Sean out of here, Mitch out of here, Matt out of here. And we just want to, this way we can have like a 15-minute episode.
Yeah, I feel like we can get a lot done.
If you're a new listener, I'm totally joking. But thanks for joining on this episode. We're talking about values that our church has. And before you hit skip, if you're listening, I think this conversation is going to be really, really helpful. We're not just talking about like, this is one of our church values. Let's talk about our mission statement. For some that may be interesting, but I think most people would say, hey, I generally just trust that you guys, your heart's in the right place, and I don't need to know all the values. But we have narrowed down in the last few years kind of the direction of our church and how we make decisions, how we make programming decisions, especially do we do this kind of program or not, is based on the value that we're talking about today. But also, this is a value that when Sean first came to us and mentioned, it was one of the ones I was most inspired by and most challenged by. Mm-hmm. I don't know if your experience was similar, but that is the value of we will be a church. We will be for the one. And we'll talk about where that comes from in just a second. But what was your experience when you? Because Sean came to us and said, hey, what about for the one?
Yeah, and I think it really came out of, hey, are we doing a good job as the church? Which sounds so funny because it shouldn't be a question that you're asking yourself as the church, I think. But are we doing a good job basing, our programming, our decisions off of reaching people for Jesus? And if we're not, we should be asking ourselves why and what do we change? And like I said, it seems like, well, that's dumb because obviously that's why you exist as the church. But I think we can get in a routine, just like in our personal lives as the church organization, where we're focused so much on ourselves and inward that we forget that that's not what we're supposed to be about. So, yeah.
All right. So let's continue our conversation, but I do want to read the passage of scripture that this comes from, because it's easy to confuse even that phrase, like for the one. Sometimes people are like, oh yeah, for the one. We are for God. We are for the one, right? It's for Jesus.
Funny. Yes, people do think that. Yep.
And it makes sense, but that's not the value.
No. Are we for God? And then the other thing that I think after you read it, that is an interesting thing to talk about is like, well, what about the 99? You don't care about us.
Yes.
About the one.
Yes.
And so it's like there's these false narratives that people create regarding this value.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let me read it. It's from Luke chapter 15, and what's interesting is the backstory. Actually, I'll read starting in verse 1 because it gives you a little bit of that backstory. It says, now the tax collectors and sinners, which is funny just the way it phrases that, were all gathering around to hear Jesus. So kind of like the least of these, the people on the periphery were gathering around to hear Jesus. It says, but the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. In verse 3, it says, then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep. And it goes on to a couple of other parables, but that is the driving force and the reason why we say we want to be for the one. We want to be for the one and do just like the shepherd did and left the 99 in a safe place. It wasn't like he put the 99 in a dangerous spot, left the 99 and went after the lost sheep. So you see it starting to kind of come together when you mentioned people saying, what about the 99? So let me ask you that question, Amanda. What about the 99?
Well, yeah, I love what you said. Like the 99, when you're talking about the sheep, they're safe, they're cared for, they're where they're supposed to be, they're being fed, they're
Yeah.
growing, they're all of those things. So in this parable, it's like, no, that still exists for the 99. So the people that are already connected in the church and community, who are growing, who are showing up on Sundays, like you don't quit caring for them while you
Yeah.
go and seek this one sheep that is lost.
Mm-hmm.
You keep doing that and you do a good job of that. And so I think the misconception is like, oh, you just forget about this 99, this flock that is here. No,
Yes.
we're not forgetting about that. We have a responsibility to that flock, but we also care so much about the one that is lost. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
easy to say, like, who cares about one? It's just one out of 99. Why
Yeah.
would you like put effort into that? And what's being said in this is, no, that matters. We want to go get the one. The one
Mm-hmm.
matters. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's not an either or, it's yes, both.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the reminder for us. And sometimes as the church, we get so focused on the 99 that we kind of forget about the one. So
It's easy to listen to the 99. Why? There's a lot of them, and they're right here with you. So
yep.
you know exactly where they are. You know their opinions. A lot of times you know their needs, and you know how they want you to meet those needs. It's really easy. It is always every church, every organization. I'm just trying to think through. I'm thinking even businesses. You're naturally going to hear more from the people that are already there. In church setting, it's the people that are attending your church, that are tithing, that are in your programming, they're in small groups, or all those things.
Right.
And I'm thinking in businesses, it's the clients you already have. And it'd be really easy to just focus in on how do we just shape this whole thing for those people. Where it's different as a church is we can't just cater to the quote unquote clients that are already at our church, because that is not our calling. Our calling is not gather this many people and then cap it at that number,
Right.
and just try to meet whatever needs that they have. It's Jesus is constantly calling to grow his church, bring more people to himself. There's a tension there, and I think that's something that you would admit to. There is a tension that comes with that value.
Oh, well, as you're talking, the tension in church growth, right, is that the church can be accused of only caring about numbers, both I think from a financial standpoint and just numbers of how many people that you can get in the building or programming or whatever. And so I think the tension is that it's like, it's not just for self-seeking a number of people, that we can get in the building. It's like, no, that's what God called us to.
Mm-hmm.
Like church growth should be what's happening if you're fulfilling the Great Commission that he called us to,
Yeah.
which is to go after the person who doesn't know, who's lost.
Right.
But it can be confusing to people, and just another reason to say like, hey, that's all you care about is padding numbers and whatever.
Yeah.
There's jokes around all of that, obviously, pastor counts and just how we approach numbers and focus on it. But any organization, cares about that on a level. It's interesting when you compare that a business. It seems very natural for a business to care about, growing and marketing and reaching people. And for some reason, it feels very unnatural to people on the outside to think that the church should be caring about those same things. So,
yes.
And the approach should be different, but it's still same concept, different approach, different reason.
So what I'd love to do today is kind of explain why we have this value. And then I want to be really upfront and say we feel that this value is important, and this is why it's good for us. This is why it's good for you to embrace this value. So maybe these are benefits for you, and then also be upfront and say this is what this demands from you, because these values are not just like we value to read the Bible more, we value to whatever, to where it's like everything is just a benefit. But this value actually determines behavior. So what behaviors does this change? So we'll get to that. So could you share just practically some of the reasons why we said this needs to be an upfront value. You were talking earlier about having to make some difficult decisions with some of the programming, the way we were doing ministry at the church.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get comfortable in the church, and we get comfortable in our own lives, right? Of like, hey, this is what works for me. This is how we're serving ourselves. And so we begin to develop either habits or programs or whatever that are very self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not thinking about other people. I mean, kind of in a conjunction with this value of for the one on staff, we have a value of people first. And I think those kind of go together of not just what's best for us, but what's best for the person who maybe, needs to bump into Jesus. Like, what does that look like for them? And so I think we created this value just to say, hey, we need to be thinking about the person on the outside more than the inside. And I don't think it's easy to walk into a church these days and just on the inside, exactly how everything goes and happens and what to expect. And we can be very, we think everybody knows our language. We can use churchy language. We can kind of use churchy programming. It's like, that's not welcoming or helpful to the person who has no idea when they're walking in this place. Like, where do I go in the parking lot? What do I do when I get there? What am I going to experience? How do I dress? Because there's all these misconceptions. So I think being for the one is just saying like, hey, what is the outside person seeing? And how do we develop an environment that they can walk into, whether they've been in church once or never or 100 times, and feel like I belong.
I remember walking. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember walking into a restaurant, and I think I told you and the leadership team about this. Walked into a restaurant, never been before. We were just in this area. And immediately when I went to the door, I was like, I think I've come in the wrong door, because I walked right into, it was a restaurant, and this was just like a weird lobby with a bathroom. And it's like the restaurant seemed far. I'm like, I think I went in the wrong door. And I even like peeked outside and said, please use other door. Like I was in the right place. No one said anything. No one came to me. We were just waiting there, me and my daughter. Eventually I went up to looked like a computer terminal that waitresses and waiters put in stuff, and found someone. And I was like, hey, and they went, 1 minute. And I'm like, okay. And then she's like, what, can I help you? I'm like, I'm trying to sit down and order something from your restaurant, and whatever. It was fine from there. But I just had this mental picture of what you're talking about is the people that go there regularly. They know where to go. They know the drill. They know who to talk to. They know all the things. And so often we forget when we have guests that come in our place, they're coming in, with a blank slate. They do not know. So I could see how that drives things really practically as far as the Sunday morning experience. But recently we made a change to one of the elements of our sports programming that we do. It was a camp that we do every single summer. We didn't talk about this.
Yeah,
I hope it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah.
But it was designed to be a camp for the one, right? It was designed to be a camp for under-resourced children in our area that did not have the funds to do a traditional camp.
Yep.
Can you walk us through what happened and then ultimately the change we ended up needing to make?
I mean, I'm assuming you're talking about Camp Found.
I am. Yeah, I should have said that. But I started talking. I was like, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this or not.
Well, I mean, years ago, I think it was this whole idea of there was this need in the community of how do we serve a community of kids who maybe don't have the money to pay for, the traditional camp that costs, $100 or $120 or whatever to go to a week of camp. So an individual at our Fred campus started this camp, like you said, for underprivileged kids. I think it was like $5 to show up at this camp. And it worked for a while, and that's what was happening. And then eventually the camp began to be like kind of overrun by our own people.
My kids were there. It was all church kids.
You did, Nick Carver. And that's where I think you have to say, like, none of that is bad. Like, I want the Carver kids to have as much fun as, the kid down the street who maybe can't afford it. So it's not the for the
Yeah.
one that's not what we're talking about. Like, it's not exclusive of like, you can't come. But eventually you have to look and say, like, hey, is this fulfilling the mission and vision that we want to accomplish, which is give an opportunity to the kid who maybe can't show up or isn't going to show up in the church building, and if it's not, then I think you have to adjust. Anyway, it began to be overrun just by church kids. And so then you're providing a program for church kids. And we kind of lost our mission and vision. And so we're like, hey, we're not going to do it anymore. Because we're not accomplishing what we need to accomplish. And so the for the one value really is just saying that too. Like, how do we adjust and continue to live that out and make this something that is for the one that isn't going to get the other opportunities or isn't going to show up in the building.
I think that's a great example. And then I think this last summer, didn't we were meeting with some, I say we, I can't remember exactly who it was. It might have been Josie or Matt, and maybe other people, meeting with a school in that area and kind of casting that vision for wanting to support kids that needed some support, that couldn't afford these camps like you're talking about. And then the school said, man, if you helped run this program for specifically some of the kids at our school, we know exactly who you're trying to help, and this would be a great partnership. And we did that. And in some ways, it was maybe less, it wasn't this big polished, like, we're running this camp for our community. It was, we are specifically helping this one school. Yep. And but it actually accomplished the mission that we were setting out to do.
Right. Yeah. And, I think, that happened at Thunder Valley. I think we tried to do that in the context of our basketball program, right, of inviting community people and organizations and maybe putting some of our own agendas aside of like, hey, if we were just doing this for us, yes, we would probably show up and we would pray before the game, which this gets into a controversial conversation of, why we do and don't make some of those decisions. Lost my headphone.
You lost a headphone.
Lost a headphone. But yeah, so we made some decisions that were like, hey, we're going to put our preferences aside of what maybe we would do, because this isn't a salvation issue. This is a preference of how we like to do programming as the church. But I don't think it speaks to the person who is maybe walking into this for the first time. It doesn't speak to the one. So we think we can adjust. We're still doing what we're called to do. We're still honoring God in this. We can still be who we are. We're not changing who we authentically are or our values or our belief, but we think we can make an impact in somebody's life by just adjusting how we do things, how we go about it, and still, like I said, still honor God in that. But
yeah, I think that's a great example, but that's happened time and time again. And having a value like this helps you run what you're doing through a filter and helps you measure: is this something this is a good thing? Is it the best thing? And I think that's why we've in so many organizations benefit from those values, so that you don't start to drift. And without them, you will naturally drift.
Yeah.
So let's unpack. This one's tricky. Maybe they'll all end up being a little tricky, but like I said before, I wanted us to be really upfront with, this is what this value provides for you. And then honestly, this is what it demands from you. So this is what we expect. If you're going to live out this value with us, this is what we expect. I think these probably kind of merge together. But I'd love to unpack that. What's one of the first things you think of when you say, this is what this value will do for you?
Yeah, I know it's kind of hard to separate those two when you say what is.
And we can just chat through it. And if there's overlap, that's okay.
I mean, I think what it does for us, it serves as a reminder, gives accountability, I think, to what God has called us to in this for the one. And I mean, it's funny. I think it looks different both from an organizational standpoint and an individual standpoint. I mean, yeah, I think it's like, what does it requires you to ask a question, at least. What does living out this value look like in my life? And
Mm-hmm.
so what it does for me is it challenges me as an individual, and it makes the thing that is obvious. Maybe, like I said, I think it's like, hey, this should be obvious for you as a church.
Mm-hmm.
It maybe makes the thing that's obvious and takes it a step further.
Yeah.
And it makes you be intentional about this idea of for the one, instead of, because I think you know it as, a Christian or a leader in the church, but it's like, yeah, I got to have intentionality behind this. So I would say that's what that value does for me. I don't know what you'd say.
I totally agree with you. I think the other thing is if you're one of the ones that are wandering away from God or wandering away from the church or both, this is going to benefit you greatly, because we are trying to rally ourselves around how to help you. So I think there's a huge benefit. The other reality is, for those of us in the church following Jesus that might say we're one of the 99, I don't know that it's a given that we always stay one of the 99. I think there are times when we wander off, and we find ourselves, maybe I used to be on the inside of that faith system in that church, and because of some life circumstances, I'm on the outside. People that they went through addictions. They're in the middle of a nasty divorce. They're whatever. Just they've wandered off for one reason or another, or maybe they were pulled away by life circumstances. I think by having this value as a church, we're set up better to have compassion and to serve and reach out to people that maybe don't totally line up with kind of the traditional definition of morality and good choices and good decision making. We're going to benefit, because hopefully our church living out this value is going to say you are worth leaving the comfort of the way we want to do ministry and go after you, even though it's messy. And, Sean said something on Sunday in his teaching where he says compassion is this willingness to step into someone else's chaos. And so I can be part of the 99 and serve. There's going to be seasons where I'm the one, and I need that 99 to be willing to lay some things aside and go after me.
Yeah, it's funny. As you're talking about that, I know, I think we were doing a value series like even a year ago, because it's something that I think you need to revisit. So we do revisit it and hit those every year with our just people who show up on Sundays. But I think somebody brought someone and they turned to them during the message and they're like, am I the one? And there's part of that I think in the moment they were actually offended by it. And I'm like, I can see that side of it for sure, of being like, you could be offended by that. But also I'm like, how cool that somebody cares enough about you that, yeah, you are their one. And I think what it does is just a reminder of, yeah, who are you not telling that you should be telling? I think that's what even that example did for me, of like, it might offend somebody, but who are you not caring enough about to say like, yeah, I do care enough about you that I'm going to take a chance and I'm going to leave the comfort, like you're talking about, of what I'm in, and I'm going to go after you. Because I think, there's an Andy Stanley thing that says like, what does love require of me? And I think that is one of the most loving things that we can do.
Yeah.
Is say, I'm going to leave my comfort, what I know, and go after the person who doesn't know. And it might be uncomfortable and they might not like it. And they might turn to you in a service and be like, am I your one?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are. And that is what love requires of us. So, yeah.
Sean, we throw this term around a lot, is, the lost, and it's this category of people that maybe we think they sin more than we do. They don't have their life together like we do. There's a condescending side to it. You
can see why it would be offensive.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love how Sean says it's not categorically this negative thing. It just, when something is lost, it just means it's not in the place that we think it should be.
Right.
And I think that can soften that word. And I'm probably still not going to just throw that around like, hey, friend, you are lost and you need to come to my church. I'm not going to say that.
Right.
But it does help me. Sometimes it can give us a sense of compassion of saying, yeah, they're great. We're not saying they're bad people.
Right.
We just think that there's another place that could be even better for them.
Yep.
And that helped me, kind of hear that definition.
Yeah, I love
so
that.
we've already kind of talked about, what that value demands, but I'd love to just kind of lean into that a little bit more. If there's anything else you'd add to that, what does this value require of you? What does it call from you? What else?
I mean, effort.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to come. I mean, we work at the church, you and I do. So I think we're speaking from a very unique place where some people who are listening are like, hey, I'm out in the world beating it out every single day with people who are lost per se. Effort is a little bit deeper for you and I. And like, I don't need to go across the building and say, Nick, you're lost today. Can we?
If you were to die today, do you know if you'd be in heaven?
Can we chat about that? You want to come to church with me? So for me, it's like, hey, when I get home at the end of the day and I'm tired, it still takes effort to talk to my neighbor who, doesn't show up at church on Sundays, who maybe has no idea of who Jesus is or what that relationship looks like, or just doesn't encounter, different kind people during the day. So not just going home, shutting my garage, but interacting. I mean, there's times I'd love to just go to the grocery store, do my thing, check out, not talk. And I did this the other day, and I actually am ashamed of it, but I'll confess it on here. But Dee and I went to eat after church, and we had Shine Prom, and it'd been a long weekend, and I was just tired. I was tapped. And I actually said to Dee, our old neighbor from our old neighborhood walked in with her little boy. We haven't seen him in forever. And I looked at Dee and I was like, I'm tapped. I got nothing left. And he gave me the key. I went to the car. So bad. And Dee he talked to her. And so what does it require? It requires those moments of like, no, you can have an interaction that takes like a minute, but sometimes it's a conscious decision. It takes effort to live that out. And we don't always get it right. I mean, we're talking about the church, how we're for the one. Yeah, you have a value and you want to live that out. We don't always get it right. I don't get it right personally all the time, and we don't get it right as the church all the time. So.
The temptation for me is I want to be for the one as long as it feels right. And this is what I mean. Okay, so my kids are involved in all kinds of sports. And so we are rubbing shoulders with people from, there's some similar values. I mean, our kids are playing the same sports. So there's some similarities between us already. But when you're around other people, you're instantly, without even thinking about it, you're categorizing people. It's like, is this a nice person? Is this a grumpy person? Does this person complain a lot? Do we have any other values that are similar? And you just make those judgment calls sometimes within seconds.
Right.
And I find I'm not embracing that value if I just immediately be like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Like I don't want to talk to you. Oh, these people, I think they're more like me. All right, I'm going to go spend my time with them.
Yep.
Like you said earlier about the 99 versus the 1, I don't think there's anything wrong with being drawn to people that you're naturally drawn to.
Right.
However, I need to make sure I maintain this sense of compassion to say, right now in this scenario, what would Jesus want me to feel with these people that are right in front of me?
Yep.
Am I just going to be patient with them? Am I going to still lean in and ask how things are going and maybe discover there's a reason why they're grumpy. There's a reason why they're really negative. There's a reason, there's all these reasons. And I might be able to understand where they're coming from. And who knows, maybe Jesus would use me in their lives to bring more of himself, right? And that might be sharing my faith. It could just be that they now know that I'm a safe person that they could go interact with, that is going to be a positive experience in their day. And who knows where that's going to lead. That's just one small example, but that's what I run into weekly in my life right now. I see these people weekly.
And we like to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's our nature. So yeah, well, I want to hang out with the 99. I want to hang out. I mean, it's easy for us to hang out, right? To joke and have fun, and somebody walks into that, and it's like you automatically have to shift. And there's a vulnerability to that. I hate vulnerability. So there's a vulnerability to going after the person. But I think, just like we're talking about, God didn't call us to not exist in the 99 and go after the one. So it's learning the balance of existing in both of those environments. You need the 99 to give you energy and to provide comfort and support and all of that. Because I think if you don't have the 99, it's really hard to go after the one. It can feel very isolating to be doing that alone. So it's like, no, get involved in the 99, and then individually, let's go out and reach the one. That's what we should be doing. So
I think it also demands from me, I can be pretty judgy when it comes to, okay, this person is struggling in life, but it's based on their own decisions. They, it's one thing if, man, they didn't even ask for this. We were talking about child sponsorship, this past Sunday, and these kids never chose to be born into poverty, all that stuff.
Right.
And then there's some people that it's like, you are in a really bad spot, and it's because of 25 decisions you made over the course of this length of time. And sometimes it's easy to judge and be like, well, they made their bed, let them sleep. I know that sounds awful, but I can categorize people differently.
Right.
And I think being for the one, because, Jesus didn't elaborate on that story, but I don't know much about shepherding. But I have heard that sheep are stupid.
They are.
And they don't think well for themselves. There's a reason why they live in a herd. So I imagine the sheep that's lost, they made some stupid choices. And that's why that sheep is in the position that it's in. And Jesus doesn't care. Right. It's not this was not you did nothing to deserve it. Even if you do deserve it, it doesn't change Jesus's compassion. And that is something that this value calls of me. It doesn't matter why the people are in the situation they're in. What Jesus calls me to is compassion. How can I serve? So, as we're talking and on this personal level, I just want to go ahead and say it. I think most people would understand where we're coming from. What we're not saying is you should have no boundaries and you should give anything and everything that the struggling person in your life asks of you. That's not what we're saying.
No, we have another thing we say around here a lot regarding, because for us, looks like global mission trips. And you brought up, Turkana and child sponsorship that we did on Sunday, and just this poverty. And there's this saying, like, when helping hurts. And so I think being for the one doesn't mean that you, like you said, you don't just give someone every single thing or sacrifice or not create boundaries, or that's not what this is talking about. It's like, you can
what's
go,
best for that person.
Yeah. What's best for them. And ultimately too, it's like, it is not our job to play the role of savior. Right. So it's not like, this is not about us. You do what God calls you to do in it. And then there's parts of it that you let go and let God show up and do what he's going to do. So, and sometimes you may not see the fruit of that. So what does God call you to in the moment, in a season? And I think that comes and goes, and you play a piece and a part in it, and you got to give some of the end result up. So
at the end of the day, the hero in this story is God. It's Jesus. And he talks about 3 parables. And in 2 of them, there's a clear, it's the father of the prodigal son. That is not us in the story. That's God. The shepherd going out to get the sheep. He didn't say, hey, other 99 sheep, go, save all the ones out there. At the end of the day, he's calling us to a partnership but the hero of that story is Jesus. And I think sometimes we can get caught up in this person needs help, and I'm gonna be their savior, and then you end up you're completely expended, you're exhausted, and you don't know which way is up. So it's a partnership at the end of the day with Jesus and His calling. Anything else you'd add?
I don't think so.
I feel like our conversation was pretty stinking good.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you are more of a shepherd in the sheep world than I knew about you, Nick Carver.
Just because I know the sheep are dumb.
You know that sheep are dumb. Yeah.
We had this moment this past Sunday singing a song that we wrote based on Luke 15. And anyway, Luke, the worship leader on staff, Luke, we both had the same mental thought. And there's a video out there, a viral video of a sheep that's stuck. And then someone helps the sheep out and it bounces around and goes right back into the same like hole that it's stuck in. And it was like, what a picture of, well, sheep probably, period. But also the way we are, and we'll get ourselves right back into the same mess over and over and over again. But we just felt like showing that video in the moment was like, it might be too funny. It might be too distracting.
You think you might lose some spiritual element to that?
Yeah. It might get the picture across, but then people were like, we don't want to sing anymore. We're good. We're good.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if worship leading doesn't work out, I feel like
shepherding.
Yeah. I mean, sheep farmer Nick.
A lot of money in sheep these days.
Yeah.
Well, Amanda, thanks for the conversation. I'm sure we'll talk again with one of these values soon, but just really appreciate your insight. I think you, I know you would say you're not perfect, but I think you and Dee and your family, you live out this value really, really well.
Thanks, Nick. Mm-hmm. When you get old, then, you start learning some things, but yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Nick. See you later.
We'll talk soon.